The sterile, chaotic hum of JFK's international terminal was a familiar noise to Dr. Selina Ross, but the sound that cut through it was sharp, personal, and laced with an authority that was entirely unearned. "I'll be taking that," the flight attendant said, her fingers closing not on the ticket Selina was offering, but snatching it directly from her hand. The attendant, her name tag gleaming, Jessie, scanned the first-class document with a look of profound disbelief. "There is just no way this is yours," she sneered, holding the ticket for seat 1A just out of reach. "You're going to have to step aside. Now!" The fluorescent lights of John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 felt like sandpaper against Dr. Selina Ross's overtired eyes. She'd spent the last 72 hours in a pressurized skunk works lab in rural New York, finalizing the preliminary report on the new G-77 turbine's acoustic baffling system. The work was groundbreaking, proprietary, and utterly exhausting. Her flight to London wasn't a vacation. It was the second leg of a critical inspection tour that would end with a go, no-go recommendation for Transatlantic Air's TAA new $5 billion fleet. Selina was, by any measure, at the apex of her field. As a lead diagnostic engineer for Aerosystems Dynamics, she was one of fewer than 20 people in the world qualified to sign off on this specific system. Airlines didn't just respect her, they feared her reports. But at 8:09 p.m. on a Tuesday at Gate B26, she was just a black woman in a charcoal grey, impeccably tailored cashmere sweatsuit and a pair of minimalist white leather sneakers. She valued comfort on long-haul flights, and her idea of comfort still cost more than the gate agent's monthly salary. She clutched her carry-on, a heavy-duty Pelican case containing her diagnostic tools and a worn leather briefcase. Her boarding pass for TAA Flight 44, Seat 1A, was ready in her hand. The first-class boarding line was a short, self-important queue. In front of her, a man in a rumpled suit, Mr. Henderson, was loudly complaining into his phone about a merger. Behind her, a young couple buzzed with honeymoon energy. Selina simply waited, her mind already 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, reviewing thrust-to-weight ratios. That's when she first saw Jessie Scanlon. Jessie was a woman in her late 50s who had weaponized her 25-year career as a flight attendant. She wore her uniform like armor, her blonde hair sprayed into an immovable helmet. She wasn't checking tickets. She was judging souls. Her eyes, a flat, assessing blue, scanned the premium line. They flicked past Mr. Henderson, lingered on the honeymooners, and then landed on Selina. And they stayed there. It was a look Selina knew well. It was a human does not compute error. The look held appraisal, confusion, and then, settling in like a deep chill, disdain. Selina watched Jessie murmur something to the younger gate agent, Tom, who looked flustered. Jessie then strode to the front of the line, taking the podium with an air of grim importance. "Good evening, first-class passengers," Jessie announced, her voice a reedy instrument of false hospitality. "We will be beginning our pre-boarding process momentarily. Please have your documentation ready." Mr. Henderson stepped forward, still on his phone, and handed his pass. Jessie smiled, a tight, thin-lipped expression. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Straight through 2B." The honeymooners followed. "Have a wonderful flight," Jessie cooed. Then it was Selina's turn. She stepped up to the podium, holding out her boarding pass and her passport. "Good evening," Selina said, her voice low and smooth. Jessie did not look at her face. She looked at the ticket. Her eyes narrowed. "Just a moment," she said. She tapped at her screen. She tapped again, harder. A frown creased her powdered forehead. "Is there a problem?" Selina asked. Jessie finally looked up, her gaze sweeping over Selina's comfortable attire. "This seat, 1A," Jessie said, loud enough for the passengers in the economy line to hear. "This is our premier flagship seat. It's usually reserved." "It is reserved," Selina said calmly, "by my company. I am Dr. Selina Ross." Jessie's scoff was almost silent, a sharp exhalation through the nose. "Doctor, huh?" "Right." She looked back at her screen. "I'm seeing a system conflict here. It looks like this seat is also assigned to a P. Jeffries, a priority executive." "Paul Jeffries is my colleague," Selina said, the ice beginning to form in her veins. "He booked the flight. I am the one flying. The manifest will have my name, L. Ross, cross-referenced with Aerosystems Dynamics." This was the moment of choice. Jessie could have typed, verified, and apologized. She chose, instead, to escalate. "I don't see that," Jessie lied, her voice hardening. "What I see is a high-priority seat, and a questionable ticket. I can't let you board with this." "It is not questionable," Selina stated. She was not asking, she was informing. "Scan the pass. You will see it is valid." "I'm not scanning anything," Jessie said. She held up a hand. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're holding up the line. We have a full flight." "I am in the line," Selina replied, her patience, a notoriously finite resource, evaporating. "I am a ticketed first-class passenger. I need you to scan my pass and let me board. I have critical work to attend to." "Everyone has critical work, dear," Jessie patronized. And then she did it. As Selina held the ticket out, insistent, Jessie didn't take it politely. She snatched it. The rip of the paper from Selina's grasp was a small, violent sound that seemed to silence the gate area. "I'll be taking that," Jessie said, her eyes glinting with a petty, vicious triumph. She held the small blue cardstock between two fingers, as if it were contaminated. "Return my boarding pass. Immediately," Selina commanded. Her voice didn't get louder, but it dropped an octave, gaining a weight that should have warned the attendant. "I will not," Jessie sneered, emboldened by the small crowd that was now openly staring. "I see what's happening here. You've likely found this, or it's a very good forgery. But I'm not new, and I won't be intimidated." She turned to the gate agent, Tom. "Tom, call port security. This person is attempting to board with a fraudulent document and is causing a disturbance." "A disturbance?" Selina's voice was now sharp steel. "The only disturbance is you, refusing to honor a valid ticket and confiscating my property. I am Dr. Selina Ross. I am the lead safety auditor for this fleet. You are not only interfering with my passage, you are interfering with the operational safety of this airline." It was a clear, direct warning. It was the truth. Jessie heard it as a threat from a cornered liar. "Oh, a safety auditor?" Jessie laughed, a short, ugly bark. "That's a new one. Ma'am, you can wait for security over there." She pointed to a set of hard plastic chairs away from the gate. "We can find you a seat in economy on a later flight." "Maybe." She turned her back on Selina, pocketing the 1A boarding pass, and addressed the restless business class line. "So sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. We'll resume boarding now." The humiliation was complete. It was public, it was racially charged, and it was a catastrophic error. Selina Ross stood alone, her pulse thundering in her ears, her briefcase in one hand, her pelican case in the other. She watched as other passengers filed past, some with pity, most with indifference, a few with the same smug superiority as Jessie. She did not move to the plastic chairs. Instead, she stepped to a quiet pillar, set down her cases, and pulled out her encrypted satellite phone. She didn't type this and that. Jessie Scanlon had just snatched a ticket. Selina Ross was about to snatch her career. Selina's fingers were steady as she navigated her contacts. She didn't call the generic TAA customer service line. She didn't look for a manager. She had a direct line to the man whose name Jessie had so casually tossed around as a priority executive. She pressed the call button for Paul Jeffries. It rang twice. "Selina?" His voice was tinny, sharp, and already stressed. Paul was the Executive Vice President of North American Operations. He lived in a state of perpetual crisis management. "Tell me you're on the plane. The CEO is already asking for your preliminary findings." "That's why I'm calling, Paul," Selina said, her voice a flat, cold plane. "I am currently being denied boarding at JFK, Gate B26, for Flight 44. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Then a choked sound. "What? Denied? Did you miss it? The flight is boarding." "I'm aware. I'm watching it," Selina said, her eyes fixed on Jessie, who was now smiling and chatting with a pilot at the podium. "I was just informed by your senior flight attendant, a Jessie Scanlon, that my boarding pass for 1A is fraudulent. She informed me that I didn't look the part and accused me of forging the ticket. She has confiscated it and has called for port security to remove me." She what?" Paul's voice went from stressed to ballistic. The muffled sound of a chair scraping violently on a floor came through the phone. "She confiscated your ticket? The 1A ticket? The one I booked?" "The very one," Selina confirmed. "She said it belonged to a P. Jeffries." I explained the connection. She called me a liar and told me to wait for the police. "Jesus! Sweet mother of—" Paul was sputtering. Selina could hear him typing furiously, his breathing heavy and ragged. "Selina, stay right there. Do not move. Do not talk to anyone else. I am calling the station manager right now. I'm calling everyone. Oh God. Jessie Scanlon. She's done. She is done. My primary concern, Paul, is not her employment status. My concern is that my equipment is on a no-fly list if I am not personally accompanying it. And my secondary concern is that I am meant to be in London in 8 hours to brief your CEO on whether his new 767s are a $500 million asset or a $500 million paperweight. Right now, I am leaning toward paperweight, based on the incompetence of your ground staff. This was the kill shot, and she knew it. Threatening the project, the hardware, was the one thing that would bypass all bureaucracy. "Don't say that. Don't even joke," Paul pleaded. "I'm on it, Selina. I am fixing this. Look for the station manager. Her name is Cynthia. Cynthia Wells. She's about to have the worst night of her career. I'll see you in London. I am so sorry." "Fix it, Paul," Selina said, and disconnected the call. She stood by the pillar, a statue of cold patience. Meanwhile, at the gate agent's desk, 10 feet from Jessie, a private line began to shriek. It wasn't the normal customer service ring. It was the red alert operations line. The young agent, Tom, jumped. Cynthia Wells, the TAA station manager for Terminal 4, was halfway across the concourse when her radio crackled. "T4 manager, Ops line B26, stat!" Cynthia, a harried woman who lived on antacids, broke into a clumsy run. She arrived at the desk, breathless, just as Tom was picking up the phone. She snatched it from him. "This is Station Manager Wells." Jessie, noticing the commotion, stalked over. "What is it, Cynthia? Ops is always in a panic." Cynthia's face was a mask of professional concern, but her knuckles were white on the receiver. She was listening. Her eyes darted around the gate area. "Yes, Mr. Jeffries, Yes, sir, I understand." Her eyes went wider. "She's what? The lead from Aerosystems?" Her gaze found Tom, and her expression was terrifying. Who did this?" Tom, pale, pointed a trembling finger at Jessie. Cynthia's face, which had been white with shock, went a deep, mottled red, the color of pure, unadulterated panic. "Oh my God, Cynthia whispered, the phone still pressed to her ear. Jessie. Jessie Scanlon, who had been watching with detached amusement, suddenly felt a cold rock drop into her stomach. The manager was looking at her as if she had just set fire to the plane. Yes, Mr. Jeffries. I see her. I am handling it right now. Cynthia slammed the phone down, her entire body shaking with adrenaline and fear. Jessie, what did you do? Cynthia's voice was a low, dangerous hiss. What? Jessie said, defensive. I stopped a fraudulent passenger. She was trying to get into 1A. She was claiming to be some doctor, and— Where is she? Cynthia demanded, her eyes scanning the crowd. Over there, Jessie pointed. The one in the tracksuit. I called security. They should be here any— You imbecile! Cynthia screamed. It was a sound so unprofessional, so raw, that the entire gate area, including the passengers already on the plane, turned to look. That one in the tracksuit is Dr. Selina Ross. She is the chief safety auditor for the entire G77 fleet. She is the personal guest of the CEO. The man you just heard on the phone was Paul Jeffries, the EVP of operations, and he is calling for your badge. Jessie's meticulously powdered face seemed to crack. The blood drained from it, leaving a sick, greyish pallor. What? No. She can't be. Give me the ticket, Cynthia snarled, holding out her hand. Give me the ticket, now. Jessie's hands fumbled at her uniform pocket. The sneer was gone, replaced by a mask of slack-jawed horror. She pulled out the crumpled boarding pass for 1A. You called security, Cynthia repeated, her voice dripping with venomous disbelief as she snatched the ticket. You called security on the one person who can ground our entire transatlantic fleet with a single email. Get out of my sight. Go to my office and wait for me. But the flight— I'm the purser, Jessie stammered, her entire world tilting on its axis. You are nothing, Cynthia spat. You are a suspended employee as of right now. Go. Jessie, for the first time in her 25-year career, was speechless. She stumbled back, bumping into a delayed sign, her face a crumpled mess of ruined makeup and dawning terror. Cynthia smoothed her blazer, took a deep, shuddering breath, and plastered a mask of supreme, groveling apology onto her face. She began walking, almost running, toward the pillar where Dr. Selina Ross stood, watching, her phone now back in her pocket, her expression as impassive and unforgiving as a judge. The walk from the podium to the pillar was the longest 30 feet of Cynthia Wells's life. Every passenger, every employee, every Starbucks barista was watching this drama unfold. She could already feel the incident reports piling up, the emails from legal, the sheer, crushing weight of corporate fallout. And at the center of it all was this woman, Dr. Ross, who hadn't moved a muscle. She just watched Cynthia approach, her eyes holding no anger, no satisfaction, just a profound, weary disappointment that was, somehow, much worse. Dr. Ross, Cynthia began, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts. I cannot find the words to express how deeply sorry I am. On behalf of Transatlantic Air, on behalf of Mr. Jeffries, on behalf of everyone, there has been a catastrophic failure in our service. Selina just looked at her. This is your boarding pass, Cynthia said, offering it as if it were a fragile artifact. You are, of course, in Siat 1A. We apologize. Selina took the pass. She did not look at it. She looked past Cynthia, at Jessie, who was shuffling toward the manager's office, her shoulders slumped, a picture of total defeat. Then Selina looked at Tom, the young agent, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. A failure in service, Ms. Wells? Selina's voice was quiet, yet it carried, Is that what we're calling it? Your employee publicly accused me of fraud, confiscated my travel documents, and called security on me based on... What, exactly? Cynthia flinched. Dr. Ross, I assure you, was it my clothing, Miss Wells? Or was it, perhaps, that my presence in the first-class line didn't align with her personal feeling-based security protocols? It was an unacceptable act of prejudice, Cynthia admitted, wisely choosing not to lie. There is no excuse. None. The employee in question, Ms. O'Scanlan, has been suspended from duty, effective immediately. She will not be on your flight. She will not be on any flight. I see, Selina said. She finally looked down at her boarding pass. And what about the flight? It's been boarding for 10 minutes. My equipment is still here. We will board you right now. I will personally escort you, Cynthia said, grabbing for Selina's Pelican case. Selina pulled it back slightly. I can manage my own bags. I have been for my entire career. What I require from you, Ms. Wells, is a full, written incident report delivered to my email and CC'd to Paul Jeffries and your CEO by the time I land in London. I want a timeline of events, a copy of the security call log, and a statement of the corrective actions you will be taking to ensure this failure never happens to another passenger. Cynthia was pale, but she nodded. Yes, Doctor. You will have it, I promise. Good. Selina snapped her briefcase shut and picked up her Pelican case. Now, I'd like to board my flight. Of course, this way. Cynthia led the way, practically bowing. She scanned Selina's pass herself. Beep. The green light flashed. Welcome aboard, Dr. Ross. Please, right this way. The walk down the jet bridge was a bizarre tableau. Cynthia was half walking backward, still apologizing. The first-class cabin crew has been briefed on the situation. Jeffrey, the acting purser, will take excellent care of you. We've opened a bottle of the Dom Perignon for you. P3, from the CEO's personal stock. That won't be necessary, Selina said flatly. I'll be working. They reached the aircraft door. The two flight attendants, standing there, a man and a younger woman, looked petrified. The man, Jeffrey, stepped forward, his face a practiced mask of serene hospitality, but his eyes wide with panic. Dr. Ross, he said, his voice a flawless, gentle tenor. Welcome aboard Transatlantic Flight 44. I am Jeffrey, your purser for this evening's service. It is an absolute honor to have you with us. Jeffrey, Selina nodded, stepping over the threshold. Please allow me. He took her Pelican case with the reverence one might reserve for a holy relic. I will personally stow this for you. As Selina stepped into the cabin, a hush fell. The other first-class passengers, including Mr. Henderson in 2B, had heard the shouting from the gate. They now watched as this woman, the one accused of fraud, was being personally escorted to the most exclusive seat on the plane by the terrified station manager and the fawning purser. Mr. Henderson, who had been sipping a pre-departure orange juice, nearly choked. He recognized Selina and quickly buried his face in the Wall Street Journal, his ears burning red. Dr. Ross, seat 1A is right here, Jeffrey gestured. The finest seat in the fleet. I trust you'll find it comfortable. It will be fine, thank you, Selina said. She slid into the plush, ridiculously oversized suite. Cynthia hovered at the edge of the cabin, a miserable ghost. Dr. Ross, again, my apologies, Cynthia whispered. Selina finally turned and gave the station manager her full attention. Your apology is noted, Ms. Wells. My report, however, will be factual. I suggest yours is as well. Good night. Cynthia Wells nodded, defeated, and backed away, disappearing up the jet bridge. The door hissed shut. Jeffrey reappeared at Selina's elbow, his demeanor one of utter subservience. Dr. Ross, may I get you a drink before we push back? As Ms. Wells mentioned, we have the 98P3 chilled for you. I'll have a sparkling water with lime, and I will need a pot of black coffee immediately after takeoff, Selina said, already pulling her laptop from her briefcase. Of course, Doctor. And Jeffrey? Yes? I don't want to be disturbed for the first 3 hours of this flight. No meal service, no interruptions, unless the port side engine starts making a sound like a bag of loose gravel. Then you can wake me. Otherwise, I have work to do. Jeffrey, an aviation professional, recognized the reference to a specific type of compressor stall. He swallowed. Yes, Dr. Ross, absolutely. Sparkling water, coming right up. As he hurried to the galley, Selina looked out the small window. The lights of JFK blurred as the tug vehicle began to push them back. She was on the plane. She had won the battle at the gate. But the war, she knew, was just beginning. She opened a new file on her laptop. The file was titled Operations Audit, Addendum, Personnel and Liability. Jessie Scanlon had wanted her to be a nobody. She was about to find out just how somebody Dr. Selina Ross truly was. Back in the terminal, Jessie Scanlon sat in Cynthia Wells's cramped, windowless office. The triumphant adrenaline from her catch at the gate had long since curdled into a cold, acidic dread. She had been a TAA employee for 25 years. She had seniority. She had friends in the union. She had always been untouchable. She'd had passengers removed before, people she deemed disruptive, intoxicated, or simply not right. A quiet word to the captain, a vague security concern, and they were gone. But this was different. The panic in Cynthia's eyes, the names being thrown around, EVP, CEO. The office door opened and Cynthia entered. She didn't sit. She stood over Jessie, her face a thundercloud. Do you have anything to say for yourself, Jessie? Cynthia's voice was quiet, dead. It was a mistake, Jessie burst out, her voice cracking. She didn't look like... she had a ticket for 1A. She was wearing a sweatsuit, and she was hostile from the beginning. She was hostile. Cynthia's laugh was brittle. I just reviewed the CCTV footage from the gate podium, Jessie. You were the one who was hostile. You refused to scan a valid ticket. You snatched it from her hand. You accused a passenger in front of 100 people of forgery. And then you called security on her. Cynthia leaned down, planting her hands on the desk. Let me explain to you what you did, Jessie. That woman, Dr. Ross, is the chief engineer from Aerosystems Dynamics. The only reason TAA has clearance to fly these new 7667s at all is because of her provisional sign-off. She is on this flight to present her final audit to our CEO and the board in London. The audit that unlocks $5 billion in fleet assets. Jessie's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Paul Jeffries, Cynthia continued, is her direct corporate liaison. Seat 1A wasn't just reserved. It's her designated seat for this entire audit tour. It's her seat. And you, with your 25 years of experience, decided she was a thief because you didn't like her clothes. I'll apologize, Jessie stammered, wringing her hands. I'll go to London. I'll apologize to her personally. You will go nowhere, Cynthia said. I just got off the phone with Paul Jeffries and legal. Jessie Scanlon, you are suspended without pay, effective immediately, pending a full investigation, which I assure you is just a formality for your termination. Termination? Jessie shrieked. You can't. The union won't touch this, Jessie, Cynthia yelled, her composure finally breaking. This isn't a dispute about overtime. This is gross misconduct, negligence, and according to legal, a potential multi-million-dollar liability. You didn't just insult a passenger, you jeopardized the entire TAA Aerosystems contract. You endangered the company's stock value, all because you wanted to play God at the boarding gate. Cynthia walked to the door and opened it. 2 Port Authority officers, the very ones Jessie had called, were standing outside. "Jessie, your TAA credentials. Hand them over," Cynthia commanded. Jessie looked at the officers, then at Cynthia. The reality was crashing in. This was not a warning. This was not a slap on the wrist. This was the end. Her hands, shaking so badly she could barely unclip it, removed the lanyard from her neck. The plastic ID card, the one that had given her power and access for a quarter of a century, was placed on the desk. "You are to be escorted from the terminal," Cynthia said, her voice now devoid of all emotion. "Your belongings will be shipped to you. You are not to contact any TAA employees. You are not to set foot on TAA property. Do you understand? You're doing this. After 25 years, Jessie's voice was a desperate whisper. "No, Jessie, you did this," Cynthia replied. "You did this in about 90 seconds. Officers, please." As the officers stepped forward, Jessie Scanlon finally broke. She let out a dry, ugly sob. She was no longer the queen of the cabin. She was a 58-year-old woman in a polyester uniform, being led out of an airport terminal like a common criminal. The other TAA employees watched her go, their faces a mixture of shock, fear, and in a few cases, a quiet, long overdue satisfaction. Meanwhile, 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, Dr. Selina Ross was working. The sparkling water and the pot of black coffee had been delivered with silent, almost invisible efficiency. Jeffrey and the other attendant, a young woman named Sarah, communicated in whispers, their movements practiced and deferential. They knew, oh, they knew. The story had likely spread from the jet bridge to the galley in less than a minute. The purser on this flight was not just a VIP, she was the VIP who had just vaporized a 25-year veteran. Selina ignored the luxurious cocoon of Seat 1A. She ignored the noise-cancelling headphones, the 24-inch screen, the cashmere blanket. Her laptop was open, her diagnostic tool case open on the seat beside her. For the first 3 hours, she worked on the technical report. She finalized the data from the G77 turbine tests. The engine was, in fact, a marvel. It was quieter, more efficient, and safer than the previous model. She typed up her conclusion. The G77 turbine assembly meets, and in several key areas, exceeds all ASD and FAA safety protocols. Recommend full fleet certification. That was the good news. Then she opened the addendum. Addendum. TAA B-26, JFK. Ground incident, personnel risk and liability assessment. She wrote with the same cool, technical precision she used for engineering. She detailed the time of the incident, the name of the employee. She quoted Jessie verbatim. "This can't be right. I don't see that. Doctor of what? Basket weaving? A very good forgery." She didn't write with emotion. She wrote with risk. Employee B. Scanlon demonstrated immediate confirmation bias based on visual, racial apparel assessment. Refused to utilize standard verification tools, boarding pass scanner, to de-escalate. Publicly escalated the confrontation, creating a scene and utilizing inflammatory, accusatory language, fraud, forgery, disturbance. Confiscated passenger travel documents, a clear violation of TAA policy and federal air travel regulations. Attempted to weaponize law enforcement, Port Authority security, against a fully compliant, ticketed passenger. She then pivoted from the incident to the implication. The current corporate culture at TAA, as exemplified by Senora and Scanlon, appears to empower ground staff to act as security based on personal prejudice rather than established protocol. This creates a significant, quantifiable liability. If I hadn't had a direct line to EVP Jeffries, what would have been the outcome? Missed flight, delayed audit, contractual breach. If I were a standard passenger, e.g., a black doctor, lawyer, or CEO without a direct line, the outcome would have been humiliation and financial loss, opening TAA to significant litigation. The reliance on gut feeling over protocol is a systemic failure, identical in its root cause to an engineer ignoring a sensor reading because they feel the engine is fine. Both lead to catastrophic failure. She typed for another hour. She outlined a recommendation. Not just firing Jessie, that was a given. She recommended a mandatory, top-to-bottom, third-party run bias and de-escalation training program for all TAA customer-facing employees, all of them, from gate agents to C-suite. And she knew just the consulting firm to run it. She finished, attached the technical report and the addendum to a single email, and addressed it to Paul Jeffries and the TAA CEO. The subject line read, G77 Fleet Certification and Urgent Personnel Liability Report. She hit send via the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi. Only then did she close her laptop, recline her seat, and close her eyes. The engine outside her window hummed a perfect, steady, safe rhythm. When TAA Flight 44 touched down at London Heathrow, the morning fog was just beginning to burn off the tarmac. Before the fasten seatbelt sign had even been switched off, Jeffrey, the purser, was at Selina's suite. "Dr. Ross," he said softly, "we'll be at the gate in 2 minutes. Please take your time. You will be the first to disembark." "Thank you, Jeffrey," Selina said, gathering her things. "Your service was excellent." The purser looked profoundly relieved. "It was our privilege, Doctor." "Thank you." When the jet bridge connected, Jeffrey personally walked Selina to the door, carrying her Pelican case. He handed it to her, and she stepped out. She was not met by an empty corridor. Awaiting her at the top of the jet bridge was a small, somber delegation. 2 men in impeccable suits. One was Paul Jeffries, who had clearly taken the red-eye before her. His face was etched with exhaustion and stress. The other was an older, distinguished gentleman with a shock of white hair, Sir Patrick Evans, the Chief Executive Officer of Transatlantic Air. "Dr. Ross," Sir Patrick said, stepping forward, his British accent clipped and grave. He didn't offer a handshake. He looked far too apologetic for that. "I am Patrick Evans. I feel I must apologize to you personally and on behalf of my entire company for the disgraceful, appalling treatment you received in New York." Paul Jeffries just nodded, looking miserable. "Selina, I got your report. Both parts." "Sir Patrick, Mr. Jeffries," Selina nodded. "All business. I'm glad you got the report. The G77 engine is sound. You have my full certification." Sir Patrick let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since New York. That is phenomenal news, Doctor. Truly. But," Selina continued, her voice firm, "the addendum is not a suggestion. It is my non-negotiable condition for Aerosystems' continued partnership on the G77 service contract." Paul and Sir Patrick exchanged a look. This was what they had feared. "A company-wide, third-party bias training," Paul said, reading from his phone. "Run by the Matheson Group?" "They are the best," Selina said simply. "They specialize in systemic bias in engineering and logistics. If your staff can be trained to see structural failure, they can be trained to see this. It is a safety issue, gentlemen. Nothing less." Sir Patrick nodded, his face grim. "Dr. Ross, Your report was sobering. And you are, of course, correct. The employee, Ms. Scanlon, was terminated before your flight was even clear of US airspace. The station manager, Cynthia Wells, has been placed on administrative leave pending a full review of her terminal's complaint history. And your recommendation, Sir Patrick continued, is already in motion. We are wiring the retainer to the Matheson Group this morning. You have my word. What you experienced will never happen again at TAA. I'm glad to hear it, Selina said. She adjusted the strap of her briefcase. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hotel to get to. I've been awake for nearly 80 hours. Of course, Sir Patrick said, gesturing. We have my personal car waiting for you. As they walked through the terminal, Selina watched the diverse, bustling crowd of Heathrow. She had done her job. The engines were safe, and she had, perhaps, started the long, slow work of making the airline safe, too. But for Jessie Scanlon, the karma was just beginning to land. The termination was swift. The union, upon hearing the details, and the names CEO and Aerosystems, sent her a brief email stating that her actions constituted gross misconduct outside the scope of union protection. She was on her own. She lost her job. She lost her flight benefits, the free travel that had been the core of her identity. She lost her health insurance. She lost her social standing. But the hard karma the universe had in store was far more specific. 2 weeks later, Jessie was served with papers. She wasn't being sued by Selina. Selina couldn't be bothered. She was being sued by Mr. Henderson, the businessman from Seat 2B. After landing in London and reading the news about TAA's stock dipping slightly on operational concerns, a rumour Paul Jeffries had failed to contain, Mr. Henderson had put 2 and 2 together. He, and 2 other first-class passengers, had filed a class-action lawsuit against TAA and Jessie Scanlon personally for intentional infliction of emotional distress and creating a climate of public disturbance and fear. They claimed Jessie's erratic, aggressive behavior made them fear for the flight's safety. It was a flimsy case, but TAA's legal team, on direct orders from the CEO to clean house, didn't fight it. They settled with the passengers immediately, and then TAA's insurance company sued Jessie to recoup the settlement costs, citing her termination for gross negligence. She was ruined. She had to sell her condo in Queens to pay the legal fees. Her friends from the airline evaporated. She was untouchable, a pariah. She eventually found a new job, the only one she could get. A year later, a TAA pilot, one who remembered her, was walking through the long-term parking garage at LaGuardia Airport. He was heading to the shuttle bus when he saw a familiar, sour face in the cashier's booth. It was Jessie Scanlon. Her blonde helmet hair was gone, replaced by dull, thinning grey. Her crisp uniform was gone, replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting polyester vest. She was working at the pre-paid parking kiosk, handing out tickets and making change. The pilot stopped. Jessie looked up, her eyes flat and dead. She recognized him. A flash of her old arrogance sparked. "What? Got a problem?" The pilot just looked at her. He thought of the new TAA. He thought of the mandatory 8-hour Matheson Group. Seminars they all had to take now, the ones that were actually, surprisingly, making things better. He said nothing. He just took his parking ticket and walked away, leaving Jessie alone in her Forsaber 6 glass box, a prisoner of her own prejudice, grounded for life. The story of the JFK takedown, as it came to be known within TAA, became a legend. It was whispered in galleys, discussed in pilot lounges, and analyzed in HR meetings. It was the cautionary tale that ended a generation of gate gods and cabin queens who believed their small measure of authority was absolute. Dr. Selina Ross's addendum did more than just get one woman fired. It triggered a seismic shift in the company's culture. The Matheson Group, the firm Selina had recommended, descended on transatlantic air with the precision of a surgical team. Their audit was ruthless. They interviewed hundreds of employees, from baggage handlers to executives. They reviewed 10 years of passenger complaints, cross-referencing them by route, employee, and passenger demographic. What they found was a buried, systemic pattern. Jessie Scanlon wasn't an anomaly. She was just the most blatant example. The data showed that passengers of color were 400% more likely to be involuntarily reassigned from premium cabins, 600% more likely to be flagged for disruptive behavior by flight crews, even with no corroborating evidence, and 1,000% more likely to have their complaints dismissed by station managers as unfounded. Cynthia Wells, the station manager at JFK, was quietly offered an early retirement package after the audit revealed she had personally dismissed over 20 legitimate racial bias complaints against Jessie in the previous 5 years alone. Tom, the young agent, was required to go through remedial training, but was ultimately retained, as he had provided a truthful, damning statement against Jessie. The firing of Jessie Scanlon was the first domino. The class action lawsuit from Mr. Henderson was the second, but the third and most powerful was the Matheson report. When Sir Patrick Evans read the final 80-page report, he was reportedly visibly shaken. He had believed he ran a world-class, sophisticated airline. The report showed him he was running a 21st-century company with 1950s-era biases, and it was costing him millions in lost customer loyalty and potential lawsuits. The changes were immediate and brutal. Dozens of veteran employees with similar, documented patterns of bias were terminated. The entire customer bill of rights was rewritten. A new zero-tolerance policy for discrimination was enacted, and unlike previous corporate fluff, this one had teeth. Any verified complaint of racial or prejudicial bias was grounds for immediate suspension, bypassing all seniority. But the biggest change was the one Selina had demanded: the training. Every single one of TAA's 40,000 employees, including Sir Patrick Evans himself, was required to complete a 3-day, in-person sensitivity and de-escalation seminar. It was expensive, it was disruptive, and it was revolutionary. They learned to identify confirmation bias. They role-played scenarios. They were taught that "they didn't look the part" was not a security assessment, but a personal failing. The pilot who had seen Jessie in the parking garage, he had been one of the biggest skeptics of the training. He'd dismissed it as PC nonsense. But in his seminar, he'd been forced to confront uncomfortable truths. And when he saw Jessie, he didn't just see a former colleague who'd had bad luck. He saw a cancer that had been excised, a sickness that his company was finally, painfully, trying to cure. And what of Selina? She never flew transatlantic air for pleasure, but her work with Aerosystems required it. About 18 months after the incident, she was at Chicago O'Hare, flying to Frankfurt. She was once again in her comfortable travel clothes. She was once again in Seat 1A. As she boarded, a new, young flight attendant, a woman of color, was at the door. She scanned Selina's pass. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Ross." The attendant smiled, her eyes bright and professional. "We are so honored to have you flying with us today. Can I please stow that Pelican case for you? I'll make sure it's handled with extreme care." Selina paused. She looked at the young woman. There was no fear in her eyes. There was no false fawning. There was just respect. Professional, earned, genuine respect. Selina smiled, a small, genuine smile. "Thank you. That would be lovely." As she settled into her seat, she realized this was the true victory. Not the firing, not the lawsuit, not the groveling. It was this: the simple, uncomplicated, unremarkable fact of a black woman in a sweatsuit being treated like the world-class professional she was. The system had changed. The ripple effect had become a wave. Jessie Scanlon's life contracted until it fit entirely within the confines of the LaGuardia parking garage. Her world, which had once been Paris, Rome, and London, was now the sea-level long-term lot. Her interactions, once with CEOs and diplomats in first class, were now with frustrated travelers who had lost their parking tickets. She worked the 4 p.m. to midnight shift. It was a lonely, bitter existence, fueled by vending machine coffee and stale regrets. She blamed everyone. She blamed Dr. Ross for being arrogant. She blamed Cynthia Wells for betraying her. She blamed TAA for disloyalty after 25 years. She never, not even for a second, blamed herself. Her prejudice, the thing that had cost her everything, had simply metastasized. It turned from a weapon against others into a poison for herself. She hated the world, and the world, it seemed, had no problem hating her back. One freezing February night, about 2 years after her firing, the shuttle bus from Terminal B pulled up. A single passenger got off, a pilot in a TAA uniform. Jessie watched him approach the kiosk, her face setting into its usual mask of sour indifference. It was the same pilot who had seen her a year prior. He was older now, with a few more grey hairs, and he looked tired. "Ticket," Jessie rasped, her hand out. The pilot, Captain Miles Garrett, slid his parking ticket under the glass. Jessie scanned it. $128.50, she said. Miles inserted his card. As the machine processed, he looked at her. He didn't say, "Don't I know you?" He didn't say, "What a shame." He just said, "You're Jessie, right? Jessie Scanlon." Jessie's head snapped up. Her eyes, dull for 2 years, flashed with a dangerous cornered light. "What's it to you?" "I was in the Matheson seminar last week," Miles said, his voice quiet, conversational. "The refresher course. They still use your gait video as the primary training example. What not to do? Scanlon? B? JFK? Jessie's face went white. She felt the blood drain from her head, leaving only a cold, static hiss. They what? They show the whole thing, Miles continued, taking his card and receipt. The snatch, the sneer, the call to security. Then they show the interview with Dr. Ross. And then they show the fallout, the stock dip, the lawsuits, the audit. They call it the Scanlon liability. It's the linchpin of the entire corporate bias training. Jessie was speechless. She was shaking. She wasn't just a forgotten ex-employee. She was a curriculum. She was the official, company-wide poster child for racist incompetence. "You," she stammered. "You can't. That's defamation." "Is it?" Miles shrugged, zipping his flight bag. "The footage is real. The audio is real. It's not defamation if it's true. You're famous, Jessie. Every single new hire, from the CEO's office to the baggage handlers, knows your name. They know your face, and they know exactly what you did." He looked at her, his expression not triumphant, but profoundly sad. "You cost this company millions. You ruined dozens of careers, not just your own. All because you couldn't just scan the ticket." Jessie stared at him, her mouth opening and closing. The entire edifice of her self-pity, her belief that she was the victim, crumbled in that instant. She saw with horrifying clarity what she had become. A case study. A mistake. A name in a corporate textbook synonymous with failure. You get out of here," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Get out." "Good night, Jesse," Miles said, and he turned and walked out of the garage, his footsteps echoing in the cold, empty concrete. Jessie Scanlon sat alone in her glass box. The approved receipt for $128.50 was still sitting in the tray. She looked at it. Then she looked at her reflection in the glass. The same glass that had reflected Dr. Ross's face that night. She finally understood. It wasn't the firing that was the hard karma. It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the loss of her condo. This was the hard karma. Her name, the one she had been so proud of, the one she'd worn on her gleaming TAA name tag, was now and forever a synonym for disgrace. Her legacy, her 25 years of service, had been erased and replaced with a single permanent lesson. Don't be a Jessie. She finally, completely, broke. And for the first time, the sobs that racked her body were not for her lost job or her lost status. They were for her lost soul. It was a karma that was total, inescapable, and eternal. This story isn't just about a single heated moment in an airport. It's a raw look at what happens when unchecked prejudice and petty power collide with a quiet, unshakable professionalism. The flight attendant didn't just make a mistake. She made a choice. She chose to see a black woman in a sweatsuit as a threat rather than a passenger. And in doing so, she sealed her own fate. The karma that returned to her wasn't loud or explosive. It was a slow, crushing avalanche of consequences, burying her under the weight of her own actions until her entire career, her entire legacy, was reduced to a single training video on what not to do. What did you think of Jessie's downfall? Was it justified, or was it too much? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. These situations happen more often than we think, and it's stories like this that remind us, you never, ever know who you're talking to. Thank you for watching. If you were captivated by this story of justice, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to see it, and be sure to subscribe